everybody.
Hi.
I wasn't sure if the mic was on, sorry, just pausing for a second. So welcome to our panel about getting your users to adopt the technology that either yourselves or your IT department love. My name is Amy Harms, and I am the Director of Premier Services at Alfresco. That's a new role for me. I'm just moving out of the consulting role. I'm very excited about the opportunity to focus on the Premier customers because from my own background, I am an Alfresco customer. And I'll tell you a little story to start off. 6 years ago, in 2007, in May, at the same time, we were having a Alfresco conference. I don't know if it was called a DevCon or a summit at that point in time, but it was an Alfresco conference for customers in Barcelona. So last week was sort of the 6-year anniversary of a conference in Barcelona around Alfresco users. And I was at that conference because I had a 6-month-old baby girl and I had a 3-month-old Alfresco production instance on 1.2. So that gives you an idea of how long I've been around and been working with Alfresco and dealing with content management and document management and how you get users to take it on and love what you've done. And in the midst of our user adoption strategy, we went for user love, basically. And the best compliment that anyone ever paid me in my whole professional career was, I was sitting in a room one day when one of the content editors was using Alfresco for the first time. She'd been to her training the week before and she was sitting at her desk the following week. She happened to be in the same enormous open plan office space where I sat. And she stood up and went, "Oh my God, I love Alfresco, I want to lick it." And I just thought, my job here is done. My life is complete. That, when you run an ECM project and you're the business owner or the stakeholder in delivering ECM to your organization, people want to lick it, you're doing a good job. So here we are. That conference was a little frustrating for me in Barcelona in 2007 because there were no business tracks. It was me talking about how you get customers to lick it, and a whole bunch of developers, talking about how you write Java and extend Alfresco Explorer because Share didn't even exist then. But I feel like it's come really full circle, and I'm really, really glad to be here today, chairing this panel with you all. And I feel like it's, for me, it's something I've been waiting to happen for a long time, and that's why I submitted the proposal for this paper, and that's why I've worked really hard to get these guys who I know 2 of them actually very well, to be here to share with you what they've done and how they've, I don't know if you've got anyone who wants to lick it yet, but they're doing good work, they're doing great work. So just a quick hands up, who in the room is an existing Alfresco customer? You've been in production for like a year or more. Okay, that's a fair group. And who's new or not in production yet? About half and half. Interesting. Wasn't true in Barcelona. In Barcelona, everyone had been using Alfresco for a really long time. Cool. And who here would say they're from the business side? Half. And who here would say they're more technical? Wow, you guys have got a tough one. You're going to have to be all things to all audience members today. No, that's really good. So what we're going to do is I'm going to introduce the panelists that you've got here, and then I'm going to give them each 5 minutes, so 15 minutes total, just to kind of talk about basic use case, and then more importantly, user approach, how they approach the user issue and the adoption. And then the more succinct we can be about that, then we want to open it up to questions, because I really think the meat of this type of panel is you being able to talk about what you're doing and ask them questions. So that's how we're going to roll, and my friend Mark at the back is going to wave at me, get my attention when we're overrunning, because we have to be really careful, and I'm going to be a bit of a time Nazi about it. I couldn't say that in Barcelona because that was not a popular statement, but safe saying that here. But we're going to be careful about it because we want to just make sure that everyone gets a chance to say what they need to say. So that being said, let me introduce the panel. We got David Simpson here from InterContinental Hotels Group in IHG. And we've got Doug Edwards here from PGA TOUR. And we've got Noah Wittman here from UC Berkeley. So there's our illustrious panel. I don't know Doug personally, but I've worked a lot with David and Noah both in their current Alfresco production instances. So should be a good panel. And I'm going to hand it over now, just start going down the line basically, and do your little 5-minute use case and approach.
Thank you, Amy. Hi, David Simpson. I work at IHG. I'm responsible for several other applications, but my primary area of responsibility is the document management system, which we use Alfresco Enterprise as the core. This started approximately 4 years ago, and I picked up the application 3.5 years ago with only 20 people. It was a very specific group. They used documents intensely. It was perfect. What we designed the structure for, however, was to be able for the entire enterprise to use it. So we synced up all 78,000 users across the entire enterprise, and they do have access to it now. They can use it freely. It's out there. Everyone can use it. There's no cross charges for departments. We really designed it as an enterprise app. What had happened is that there's a bit of ignorance playing into the distribution and usage of it, and that people don't know that it's out there. But the way we overcame that really was through viral enhancement. We came through, the 20 people told their 20 people, told their 20 people, and then it got to one of our program management offices. They started using the sites to share project material. That spread to other project management offices and ultimately to the business. We now support approximately 4,000 people directly with the UI, and right at 20,000 people in total between the UI and the API systems that connect into us. The applications were easy. They wanted a place to store the documents. We had a nice, easy REST interface they could connect to. The rest was history, and they load 100,000 documents a month into it from those other applications. So it was very easy on the technology side. The business side was a bit more of a challenge, but I found that the key to that was simply keeping the interface specific and simple to the customer's need. So if they needed a map drive, and that's what they were comfortable with, you gave them an SMB or a WebDAV map drive, you showed them how to drag and drop, and you were done. Other people might want to do a little bit collaboratively, use the share interface. We actually started out with the Explorer interface, for those of you who know that. And it's a little more primitive, but it's simply functional, and they've worked that as well. We still have people on Explorer today. But as it moved through, the way you invite people on share is you get emails. You say, wow, this is a site. Oh, this is really cool. How do I use it? How do I use it? And it really went. So now we support over 25 departments in Atlanta alone, and approximately 4,500 people worldwide remotely. So it is grown very virally. I do not hang signs. I don't go out and make sales pitches. It's really department to department. People see it, they like it, they want to use it, they contact me, and I show them where it is and how easy it is to use. And that's all there is to it. We keep it very simple, specific to the customer's application. We don't try to melt them down with too much information or too much additional accessories and features with it. Really keep it to the point of what they need, and they'll grow on their own in sophistication.
Thanks. So at the tour, we're a little bit different actually. Our primary use case is really migrating all of our business content, our business documents from an existing file server to Alfresco, and using the Alfresco underlying repository as the core repository for all of our business documents. And so really, from our standpoint, we're moving our users' cheese. They're used to working in Windows File Explorer, they're used to using their documents in a certain way, and really the driver behind the change is coming from the IT department. We're basically forcing them to change. So for us, it's a little bit different. We do have to kind of market a little bit. We do have to interact with the end users. And so to do that, what we found was that you really have to engage. It takes a little bit longer. You have to be very specific on how, and very driven. We chose a department by department approach rather than a big bang migration. Certainly took a much longer time frame to come to market, if you will, within the organization. But And we're still not 100% there, we're about 3/4 of the way. But we, what we found is that, people, the old adage was that people don't like change and that you're gonna get a ton of resistance. And that's not really true. That's not what I found to be true. I found that people actually, given the right amount of change, people like to change. People thrive on proper change. I mean, we all go through, we all get married, we go on vacation. We purposefully drive change into our life, and it's how do you mimic that within the organization? And for us, it was obvious that they don't like to be forced to change. They don't like disruption is really what they don't like. So if you get your end users to really own that change in a way, so when we go through and we identify stakeholders in each business area and get them, they go in with a certain mindset, they go in with a certain kind of baseline on how they approach things. And if you think of, rather than focusing on the technology and, oh, look at all these great new features, but that's not the way people think within the organization. They just know, look, I just need to go get this work done, and I just need an easy way to go get that work done. The way we approach it is, let's talk about the way you guys work with documents within your business unit, within your area, and how can we then get you guys to own that change, own this migration into Alfresco and make it easier for you. And that's, in some areas that's a challenge, in some areas that's a little bit easier, but we did find that if we can get them engaged and really work with them one-on-one, it becomes a lot easier. They really they take ownership of it. They'll tell you what they like, what they don't like. You can build off of that. I mean, frankly, the one common thing I think across all organizations, people like to complain about work. So if you ask them, they'll tell you what they don't like about what they're currently doing. And if you build on that and really kind of focus, all right, you don't like to do this now, let's go figure out a way to do it better with Alfresco. So rather than focusing on the technology, focus on the business piece of it, you can get them there a little bit quicker. So.
Hi, my name's Noah Wittman, and I work at UC Berkeley in the central IT department. And I manage a number of content and collaboration services, and one of those is our Alfresco-based service. So we've been working with Alfresco for a number of years, probably 4 years now. We started taking a look at the Alfresco as it moved from the Explorer interface into the new Share application. And basically what we've done is we've taken Share and extended it to the entire campus. So anyone with a campus ID can sign on and get access to an Alfresco Share site. So that's faculty, student, staff, potentially 50, 60,000 people. And have available a great service for file management, collaboration, digital asset management, and research data management. There's a little bit more sort of specialization and things I can say about the use cases. But generally, there are some things we'd like to do. There are some needs we were trying to address. It was basically, we were complementing existing services, so this wasn't a change management issue for us. But in terms of the rollout, we did do some marketing, and it's hard to do at a university that's as large and decentralized and fragmented and heterogeneous as UC Berkeley. There is no one mail list that we can send an email to everyone. In fact, that's really frowned upon. So our communications were I mean, it's very. We created articles. We did a series of workshops and training sessions, some introductory, some sort of about how to use mobile applications, how to use web dev, those kinds of things. We created bookmarks that we left in all of the libraries on campus. Oh, and by the way, we rebranded Alfresco Share. So we called it the Research Hub. And this was largely because the primary sponsor of the project was interested in research. In practice, it's used by a much broader audience of sort of administrative and academic uses, student groups, and so on. We released the service about 2 years ago. Today we have 10,000 users. 1,000 project sites, 3.5 terabytes of data. What's really been successful, I think, is to find local champions within a project or a department. Some sort of IT staff are enormously grateful that we've taken on sort of the administration of what to them was beforehand was a file server or a digital asset management system that they had to run themselves. Now we're running it for them. And they only take it on themselves to sort of be the advocate and say, hey, we're using this system, and get folks on board. So we've seen a lot of adoption from, you know, a large research group or a museum that decides to take this on and train a dozen or so of their staff or colleagues on the projects. Why don't I stop there? Yeah.
Great. You just hold the mic for a sec. So that being said, we'd like to open up for questions. I think that's where the real value is. I hope you have lots of questions and are ready to go. And Mark will just, if you raise your hand, if you've got questions, Mark will come and bring the mic to you. You have to use the mic because we want to make sure that for the recording we've got your questions captured. So.
But this question is about customization that you've done. Specifically, I'm interested to know across all of your environments, but I'm most interested around the research, which is fairly unstructured, whether the users make use of tags, labels, or any sort of extra metadata.
So at Berkeley, in terms of the general service, basically, we try to do as little as possible in terms of, it's basically is just the share application that we've localized. The look and feel is different. It's integrated with our campus single sign-on system. But there are some things that we've been working on for the research community. So one of the things that set Alfresco apart from other offerings was its ability to handle custom metadata schemas and workflow. And so one of the integrations that we've built and haven't pushed out broadly, we're still in pilot mode, is basically a really simple way to take content from within our collaboration environment, or Alfresco, and send it to the UC system-wide digital repository for long-term preservation access. This is probably a use case that many campuses share in terms of there's a place for active collaboration, but who is actually going to be the sort of look after the stewardship of the data? And it's not so much a question of the technology. Alfresco probably would have been perfectly fine as the sort of repository of record, but in this case it was a question of sort of a separation of roles more. Anybody else?
I mean, at the tour, we've done a few customizations on the share level, but nothing dramatic. We focus primarily on the document library, so we've kind of removed a lot of the other stuff. We do have specific business use cases that are really metadata heavy, and we're actually rolling out Workdesk for it, and we're really focusing a lot of those use cases within the Workdesk environment. But otherwise, we really haven't done a ton of customization.
We're pretty much black box. So we've added one dashlet as a customization, and that's it. And we have, I think, as last count was 12 amps that primarily apply different web scripts down into the operating system instead of in the repository itself. But we also use web scripts in the repository, but those are very easy. They don't change between versions, and once we apply those 12 amps, we've done the upgrade. So we drop in 415, I believe, is the next target. Apply the amps, we're pretty well done. I purposely designed it that way to keep it as simple as possible.
Great, thank you.
If you have a distributed set of users, many offices or wherever, how do you guys handle education and getting it where all of your users at least reach a minimum level of competence in the software?
Well, I run a pretty distributed operation. So we have offices all around the world: Sydney, Shanghai, Dubai. Denham is considered a remote office, although it's our corporate headquarters.
It's the middle of nowhere, London.
So essentially, we do an initial training wave for everyone. I have a support engineer on my team that does the training through WebEx, typically for remote offices. And then we appoint a coordinator for up to 20 people for each area and for each office. They are a go-to person, so we use a tiered support level. The end users go to the expert or the advocate for that group. They contact us through a ticketing system that we have automatically go into Jira to allow us to track system issues and things like that. Then we may get back with them directly, or may give the coordinator the answer and get back to it. So we're kind of working a grassroots support organization out there, and it's actually worked very well because it's very regionalized, very localized to the environment, and they understand the end users much better than we do.
Frankly, at the tour, the quarter of the staff that we haven't really hit yet are our remote staff, quite frankly. And so we have not made a huge push out to our satellite offices and our tournament locations yet. But our vision there is that there'll be a combination of webinars and again, identifying at each location a kind of a stakeholder who, sort of the same thing, a grassroots kind of support person there that, you know, on site will kind of own the end user piece of the solution and really act as a liaison with our department from a support standpoint. But we have even the same, we've taken the same tack even locally at our headquarters location where we provide, and in these cases, a lot of times one-on-one meetings with the department internally. We'll implement something similar just over a WebEx session or something of that nature for initial training.
I think what happens often in our case is that people dive right in, and they may find that they want to. Some folks are fine and use it, and those that need additional training see that we offer regular workshops and then sign up.
Great. Any questions?
Two questions. From the implementation side, what did you do for getting the business involved during implementation? How did you structure the team, and what did you do for the business involvement as you're implementing?
Okay, so sure. So in terms of the team structure, first of all, we've relied heavily on professional services groups. We're very pleased with TriBloom. Our partner has also worked with us on the California Library integration project I described earlier. But in terms of the operations, so basically it's really, this is higher ed, so it's sort of a shoestring budget. I'll describe the FTEs involved. For us, it's we have basically 25% FTE, that's the support and communications lead, and he has 3 undergraduate students that do the support and communications for him. And then on top of that, we have a 50% technical admin and a 20% basically service lead, and that's myself. And then in addition to that, we have we run Alfresco out of the data center. So we have our whole Unix team, the DB team, the VM is all run out of the data center, and so we rely on their expertise for that. And basically, our admin really is only Alfresco administration. And then for any additional development and customization, we rely again on TriBloom for their support.
Yeah, we rely very heavily on Bluefish as our partner. They handle basically the majority of our customizations or projects as they come up, and they help us with a lot of support issues as well. Internally, we host in our own data center. We actually have essentially an on-premise cloud. We allow our staff to get to the data from internet connections outside of our firewall, but we host everything internally within our firewall. We don't have a very large support structure, to be quite honest with you. We as well, we're not education, but we're a 501c3 organization. So we do not have a large IT budget, quite frankly. And so we have a systems admin who really maintains. We don't have a true Alfresco administrator who's responsible for maintaining Alfresco on a day-to-day basis. We've got a systems admin and an assistant systems admin who oversee the server side of things. We've got a development operations person who does minor development, back-end development for Alfresco. And then our standard help desk is supporting the end users. And then we rely on Bluefish very heavily, really on a daily basis for things.
So our organization probably uses 4 or 5 use cases for 90% against the Alfresco repository. We've actually mapped it out, and those people, save, download, read, edit, and share, and that's about it. We do have some custom interfaces that we built on web scripts. Now, when they go to very specific, and those are the people who use a lot of metadata and specific search screens, for that, we'll get a business analyst and project manager. We'll go through a discovery phase, a design phase, development, that whole process. We are a development organization, even though I try to keep it as black box as possible for support mechanisms. For that, everything else, it's pretty much we show them how to use it. Sometimes we'll do a little custom video for them to remind their user base on how to use it for process. A few simple rules and folders. Other than that, it's pretty straightforward.
Okay. The follow-on question is, have you implemented a governance program, and has that governance program involved the business?
So follow-up question, what do you define a governance program as?
So I define a governance program as the ability to ensure integrity, trust, reliability, and quality of your information.
I'd say this is an ongoing process of trying to improve governance. There's, if you can believe it, there's significant bureaucracy within our central IT organization. So we have during the launch, we constituted a steering group and advisory, but this is something, it's really hard to get the right people in the room to make these decisions. There is a sort of clear path to decision making, at least. It's clear who I go to when I need to make a decision. But in terms of bringing more people on board, which is an important part of that, we have more work to do.
No. From our perspective, from the IT department's perspective, we've left that to the business, and frankly, the business can't really make a decision. And so we're ready to implement. We will be glad to partake, a project to implement whatever kind of governance program we want to take. And frankly, there's been discussions for the last couple of years on really what that governance policy should be. And until that really comes to light, honestly, it's not on our near-term roadmap.
So being a rather large organization, we have lots of governance around lots of things, and certainly we have definitions and permissions around the disposition of documents within the organization. We have public, confidential, and restricted documents. We expect the end users to adhere to that. There is no auditing, there is no trials of misuse of the system or anything like that, but basically we allow open use of the system. We do discourage them backing up their iTunes library and things like that to the system. Anything else, if they want to move everything off their shared drive, that's fine. We've had users move anywhere up to 50 gigabytes at a time, and we will assist them with that. But it's all document oriented. People back up their emails there. It just really depends on the use. We've elected to keep it very loose in that perspective, because that way we don't have a lot of rules to follow up on, and people use it to the best of their ability. And I think that's great. And one of our cultural values is do the right thing, and a lot of our employees take that very seriously and don't abuse the system.
I apologize, I wasn't trying to stump the panel.
We got one at the back there, Mark.
How did you go from an advocate in a department who wanted to use the system to, the whole department, using it effectively and then moving to another department? Did you take advocates and then map their workflows and, make the system work for them and then roll it out? Or it sounds almost kind of organic the way that several of you described it. And I've had some experience where, you had a great system and it could do a lot of things, but people still needed more help to understand how they could be successful.
In our instance, we would typically have a champion in the department who would introduce it. set up the basic processes for us, and then we would have lunch and learns over a series of weeks to introduce the department to it a few at a time. We would kind of gradually push the change through, and we're not change management experts by any stretch of the imagination, but we did find that if you gradually introduce it to the environment, got people comfortable with it, and they latched onto something they really liked about it, then they became the next, sub-advocate for it, and it just kind of leached on from then on. But it was very organic and very viral in our organization. And because we don't have a lot of strictures around what you can and can't do, and they don't have a tool like it. It's very unique in our operations. It's one of those tools that does a lot of different things. You can do it very easily, but you can get complex and sophisticated as well as a simple, straightforward tool. So we found that it was fairly organic, fairly easy to propagate through the organization. There were some change management issues on higher level users, such as legal and procurement, because they had very specific processes for how they would do things. And that was a little more difficult to achieve, especially on a global basis. Overall, it just takes a little time, persistence, take ownership of it, own it, answer all their questions, even if they're not about your problem. We've had people say, hey, my hard drive's down, what do I do? Wow. So you direct them to the right people. Not really my area, but I know who to talk to. And then you follow up with them, say, hey, did you get your hard drive fixed the other day? So it's really developing that relationship, that rapport with the group that establishes your credibility and makes them very comfortable with you, and they naturally refer you on.
Yeah, I would say in our instance that there's a little bit of that organicness that permeates through the organization, but frankly, there is a lot. There's a lot of hand-holding is what we found. I mean, we did have to handhold people through it, and the tour is, frankly, who would want to work for the PGA Tour? It's a great place to work, so people will work there. I mean, we've got employees who've been there for 25, 30 years, and so they've been doing the same thing for years since we first instituted computers. This is just how they've always worked, and now you're changing their system. It's a little bit different when you've got a younger workforce that can generally pick things up, and they're used to working in a certain way. And if you go change something, they may not like the change, but they'll adopt it. And they can easily. There's not a lot of training necessarily from a technical perspective there. But we've got a large segment of our staff that there is a lot of training there. They don't get it. They move from I do this is what I do, and I don't want to change. And now what do you mean open up Internet Explorer, or I don't get this? And so like that segment of staff, no matter how well you try to help push that organic permeation throughout the organization, it's not going to happen. You've got to handhold them. And work with them, and gradually over time, it's just a time process. They'll eventually get there, but you have to be there to support them. And one of the great things, I mean, again, we're a smaller IT shop, and so really this purview, we're talking about from an Alfresco standpoint, we consider that a customer service project in our area. We have development projects, we have data center projects, and we have customer service projects. So this was really a customer service project, which is the area that I oversee, is the customer service area. So it falls on my staff. I oversee the help desk staff. I mean, my team oversees Alfresco. They oversee our email system. All end user help desk calls come into the same group, and so that really helped us out because everybody's they know the help desk. They interact with these people on a daily basis, and so it's not. Now I've got this new system. Let me go work with this project management team or whatever that's rolling this out. Let me go talk to the people that help us that I know, and they can work with me and help me out. So that's been helpful for us.
I think the process starts out with understanding the user's needs and maybe giving them a frank assessment of whether this is a good fit, the service that they offer, and then to the extent possible working through those issues. It often requires demonstrations are helpful. This is how web dev works. This is how mobile access works. A few things that people don't normally see: the rules engine, the ability for workflows, versioning. There are certain things that people don't often see immediately. It's often helpful to sort of get them into a site quickly. If you're just talking about the vanilla Alfresco share, and a site that's filled with content and people, so you can just get a visceral sense of the potential. And then from there, I mean, the luxury in our I mean, what's often needed is to actually spend some time over weeks and have that. It's not just a question of a champion. I think it really needs to be someone who's actually within that department, who's leading, who's going to be the support lead within that department, who's really going to understand the feature set and is going to advocate for it. So it's not just a sort of a department head or champion from above saying, hey, we're going to do this. That person needs to be able to actually sit down and at least for us, because we can't scale up to meet that sort of support.
Okay, great. We've got time for one more question, so.
Actually, my question is for Noah. I work at the University of Alberta, and it's nice to see another university institution using Alfresco. My question is, are you using Alfresco for records management? Because we're looking at using Alfresco to store all our HR records, all our student records, and we're looking at it more as a records management solution rather than a document management solution. Can you just outline what efforts are being done in your institution in these areas?
Yeah, great. Thanks for making the connection. So we started, our group is primarily concerned with sort of the general collaboration file sharing scenario, and in particular around research data management. But there have been separate parallel efforts exploring the needs around records management. I know that Alfresco was considered, partially because we're using it already, but I think also because they have a strong offering there. And there actually is a group on campus that is using Alfresco, a separate instance of Alfresco for research proposal management and the like. So I forget the term for that, but basically all the sort of administrative stuff that goes with managing grant proposals. And there are many other universities that have looked at Alfresco for this use case as well. So we should all connect up. But thanks.
Okay, great. Mark, how much time do we have left?
Yeah, 9 minutes.
9 minutes. Okay, we actually have time for another question.
I was curious in terms of trying to get people to break down silos and motivate people to contribute. Curious what strategies you guys would to do that. Maybe I'll give a little context. We're trying to use Alfresco as a knowledge sharing repository to get people to contribute, experience and things they've done in the field. I think one of the challenges we're going to find is like, I developed it, I spent time with it, why would I share it with anyone else? What motivation do I have to give it away? And your experience or anyone's experiences here, like what have you guys done to break this down? Like I'm thinking about gamification strategies, I'm thinking about contests and stuff. I don't know if they're too hokey, if they could work.
I'll take that one. In my former life, when I was an Alfresco customer, my job title was corporate knowledge manager. So the reason that we purchased subscription to Alfresco was to put in an electronic document and records management solution. But somehow I ended up being the project sponsor, and my job was knowledge management. And so it was my job to go across the organization, which was an inner London county council. So, like think of the city of New York government as an example, or a parallel, if you like. And so, we had disparate departments doing very different job duties. We had, people picking up the trash, and we had people, doing social care and social work with families, and we had people who were in finance and HR and every use case imaginable. And we thought, hey, let's put in an ECM system for everyone to use. It will be all things to all people. And one of the things that we really found was that in every department, no matter what their professional job title was and what their role was, they were all records managers. They all cared a great deal about the integrity of their data and their content. They all wanted to manage it really well, but they didn't want to spend a lot of time being retrained or rebranded as content managers or knowledge workers or what have you. So our strategy, once we started to unpick all that and realize that we had the willing, we just had to approach them in the right way, was to take a little bit of time, and our approach was a very targeted phased approach per department or per job function, if you like. Our approach was to spend a little bit of time getting to know the business stakeholder in that department. So when we rolled out to the plan and control division, the people who tell homeowners that they can modify their home and extend into their neighbor's yard, etc. They manage all those blueprints and diagrams and things. When we rolled out to them, we spent a day with their business users doing a little bit of what David talked about, service design, strategy, how's this going to work, not for a whole IT system, but just for their little part of Alfresco and how they were going to use content management. So just spending that time with them and showing them that we were there to lead them through it, not to change who they were or what they did. We found that if we spent one day with them, the project went, listening to them, then delivered the existing system to them, it was like butter. If we spent no time with them and pushed them into the system, they took it up, because the product was good, the solution was good, and they needed it. So there weren't other corporate options. So it was kind of, a luxurious thing, but the overall adoption over time was an absolute fail. And it really came down to spending one day with, the most important people in that office or department who functionally took care of the content, whether they were the manager or the secretary or whatever. I mean, it literally came down to the strategy of listening to them at the front end, just for a very short amount of time, but in a very personal, face-to-face, no conference rooms and PowerPoint presentations, just workshops is what we called it. And we had Post-it notes and we put things on the wall and we took pictures of it afterwards. And when you walked out of the room, they had bought in, and that was what mattered. Right, we've got 3 minutes left, so now that I've hopped to the last question, sorry. I want to wrap up because I want to point out some things to you. We've got 3 very different organizations up here. We've got a major data-intensive research institution. We've got a much smaller, basically, a nonprofit group. And we've got an enormous, international, distributed, for-profit, commercial institution. They're all using Alfresco. They've all approached user adoption very differently. IHG have gone for a very viral, organic approach. They picked the solution purposely up front and made a lot of choices about how they wanted to manage it, and then let it grow virally. And PGA Tours and Doug have actually, I love this, what Doug says, they've moved the cheese. They went in with a very thoughtful plan up front about, we're going to do this, we're going to build it like this, and then we're going to move it, and we're going to bring everybody with us, and we're going to move their cheese, and they're going to come to the cheese. And Noah as well at Berkeley made a decision, we're going to provide this kind of solution, we're going to get it into place, and we're going to do some pretty concentrated marketing actually to notify people about it, to bring that take up to them. So very different user approaches. I just want to point out that there are 3 things here for you to take away to your projects, whether you've been doing it a long time or whether you're just starting out. Every single one of them had an approach. There was thought and consideration put into this. They're all very different, and they did it very differently. And that's one of the reasons I was really keen to get these particular individuals up here in front of you all. But there was, for the difference, there's a similarity in that it was planned and thought through. You can't just get to the point of go live and click the button and expect your Alfresco to be successful, because it won't. It doesn't work like that. And that's not an Alfresco thing, that's a content management thing. The second thing that I want you to take away is there's a real aspect of training here. Now, depending on their use cases, the level required of that training, the depth of that training, the time allotted for that training is different. But each one of them had clear training, materials and approach and way that they did it. And the third thing here, which is kind of an interesting thing because I don't think people talk about it enough, at least when you're in the point of buying your subscription and getting your project underway and working with your team to implement and go live, the one thing that nobody really talks about until the end, until sometimes it's too late, is how do we get the users on board? How do we communicate with the users? Now, whether or not you send out a corporate email or whether or not you go sit at people's desks, the point is you've got to have that communication strategy and plan and do something about communication with those users. So those are the three takeaways that we want you to think about when you go back. That for all of our differences and different ways to do something, knowing that you have an approach and making it a conscious, considered approach on the front end is important. Making sure that you've got training available to your users, whatever's right for your users, but think about it, put it in the project plan, spend some time, making sure that you approach training. And the last one is communicate with those users. If you don't do those three things, it doesn't matter how brilliant, it doesn't matter how big your servers are, or how great your Alfresco partner is, or how much money you've spent on it. It's not going to succeed for your end user. And at the end of the day, that's why you did the project in the first place. So great. Please give me a big round of applause for the